Can we really communicate with the dead? Do psychics really have powers? One famous magician, Harry Houdini, brought the American people the answer to these questions. During the 1800s and early 1900s, spiritualism was on the rise. Spiritualism is a system of belief or religious practice based on supposed communication with the spirits of the dead. Houdini, the famous magician and illusionist, took issue with spiritualism and the psychic community and made an attempt to stop it with the House Resolution 8989 and the debunking of many psychics like Mina Crandon. While it is difficult to take a stand by yourself, that is what Houdini did. He left us with books and knowledge about how these psychics, these vultures, prey on the bereaved and how to prove it. New York, 1894. Two sisters, Margaret and Catherine Fox, had an idea. They wanted to trick people into thinking they could talk to the dead. First, they convinced their mother they heard rappings, such as loud noises or crashes. Their older sister Leo was not as excited about the idea at first, but once her sister started becoming more popular, she quickly hopped on the bandwagon. The three became a trio, very popular for hosting seances for anyone looking to catch a glimpse of the other side. However, skeptics often exposed the sisters' ruses such as toe cracking, ventriloquism, and other mechanical devices. Yet these girls still sparked the spiritualism movement. They hosted bigger and better seances, levitating tables and moving objects without touching them. They were known in the spiritualist community as mediums, anyone who can communicate with the dead. These girls in 1888 admitted that they had been faking the occurrences the whole time. However, many people in the public already believed that what they were doing was real, and more psychics had come forward. The religion of spiritualism emerged from this simple beginning, and its followers believe mediums truly talk to the dead and can prove there is life after death. The suspicion of whether or not spiritualism and clairvoyance were real only grew during the period between 1923 and 1929, when President Calvin Coolidge was in office. His administration was one of the leading reasons the public started to believe the occult, or the knowledge of the supernatural and paranormal, was in the government. This was because his wife had a personal psychic known as Madame Marcia. She was said to have predicted Coolidge's victory as well as his death. This woman was a very popular medium during Coolidge's presidency. She held many seances for senators and their wives. This created an eerie feeling in the public as they saw more and more psychics in the government. This laid the groundwork for how Houdini would attempt to drive out spiritualism from the government. Born in 1874, Eric Weiss, better known today as Harry Houdini, would come to take issue with the growing belief in spiritualism during the 1920s. He started as a professional magician who is most famous for escaping from locked safes and breaking out of straitjackets. He was also known for debunking psychics. It all started when his mother passed away while he was out of the state. He never got to say goodbye, so he wanted to talk to her one last time. He went to a seance, but was disappointed when the psychic failed to contact his mother. This made Houdini indifferent to the psychic world. He wanted to believe spiritualism was real, but he also was losing his will to keep believing. Houdini was contacted by the Scientific American magazine. The people working on the magazine asked Houdini if he would investigate psychics and spiritualism. He and the police would go into a seance undercover. Then once Houdini proved he could show the police the way the psychic was cheating by revealing their mechanisms or performing certain action himself, such as toe cracking, the psychic was busted. Toe cracking is when a psychic creates small tapping noises by cracking their toes. A more well-known example of Houdini exposing a psychic was when he exposed Mina Crandon, or Marjorie. Houdini wrote about this entire experience in his book Marjorie, the Medium Exposed. Marjorie was a very famous psychic during the 1910s. She had turned the heads of many skeptics, and Houdini wanted to see if he could find out her secrets. Houdini wanted her to host a seance, so he got in contact with her, and she agreed. Houdini wrote, "If you give this award to a medium without the strictest examination, every fraudulent medium in the world will take advantage of it. I will forfeit $1,000 if I do not detect her if she resorts to trickery." Houdini was willing to offer Marjorie and her family $1,000 if she was able to prove she had psychic powers. Houdini came prepared to the seance. He wrapped a bandage around his leg for the whole day to make his muscles more sensitive. By night, the part of the leg below the bandage had become swollen and painfully tender, thus giving me a much keener sense of feeling and making it easier to notice the slightest sliding of Mrs. Crandon's ankle or flexing of her muscles. Houdini discovered that she was using a bell box. It was a 14 by 6 by 5 inch box with an electric bell inside that would ring when a switch was flipped on top of the box. Houdini wrote, "As the seance progressed, I could distinctly feel her ankle slowly and spasmodically sliding as it pressed against mine while she gained space to raise her foot off the floor and touch the top of the box. To the ordinary sense of touch, the contact would seem the same while this was being done." This is how Houdini was able to tell that she was faking what she was doing. This wasn't the only way he stood up to spiritualism, though. He created his own bill. He called it the House Resolution 8989. It stated that any person proven to be faking clairvoyant powers was to be charged with fraud and subjected to a fine of $250 or face 6 months in jail. He went to Congress with this bill. One of his more notable attempts to make a difference was by standing in front of Congress and psychics with a sealed envelope. He said anybody that could read the message inside the envelope was a psychic. However, anybody who couldn't would be arrested for fraud and face the parameters talked about in the House Resolution 8989. There was one senator on the committee who was able to guess the phrase. Houdini immediately wrote this off as a lucky guess. Houdini was removed from the premises, but this didn't stop him from standing against spiritualism. Houdini had other ways of debunking spiritualism. Possibly his most famous method was the Houdini Psychic Contest. This was a contest that Houdini held on his tours during the 1920s. After his main act, Houdini told audiences that if anyone could go on stage and demonstrate their clairvoyant powers 3 times in a row in front of an audience and Houdini that he couldn't recreate, that person would win $10,000. Many attempted, but no one was ever able to win the money. Houdini used his skills in sleight of hand and deception that he'd acquired from his years in training magic to recreate perfectly the shaking tables or predictions that the supposed psychics made using physical features. For example, seeing that someone is above the age of 50, a psychic can suspect that they more than likely have a dead grandparent of some sort or a dead relative. During one of these performances, a woman came forward claiming that the $10,000 was her money and that she could prove that she had clairvoyant powers, but she couldn't prove it. Anything she did, Houdini could do, so eventually she went as far as to predict his death. She predicted he would die before November of that year, which was 1926. Houdini died October 31st, 1926, one day before the month of November. Houdini's death didn't mean that he didn't make a difference. He left us with books about how psychics were fakes and the methods that they used to cheat the system. Books like The Unmasking of Robert Houdin and The Right Way to Do Wrong expose many psychics and tell how they created their abilities. He also talked about the occult and how it needs to be shied away from, since it evokes vultures like the Fox sisters to rob innocent people of their money, like he was robbed when he tried to contact his mother. While Houdini did change the way the public viewed spiritualism, he could not get rid of it completely. There will always be believers, which is why taking a stand is such a difficult thing to do. Even today, there are people that believe they have these abilities and can talk to the dead. People like Teresa Caputo, who has her own show on TLC as the Long Island Medium, and John Edwards, a famous medium and television personality. Even kids have these beliefs with games such as the Ouija board seen here. Yet even though these people still believe these things, there are people who do not, such as Darren Brown, a famous psychic debunker. Here's an interview with Darren where he explains cold reading, a famous technique used by many psychics. This proves that Houdini was able to make a difference by taking a stand against the spiritualism community.
Darren, could you begin by telling me what cold reading is and how it's used?
Cold reading, I suppose, is the way that a complete stranger can seemingly tell you everything about yourself without being psychic and without knowing anything about you. In essence, the cold reader or psychic is supplying a lot of words, and you as the sitter, the other person, is supplying the meaning to those words. And it relies on a lot of techniques. It's not really a question of forensic body reading and the sort of things that people might... It's not really normally even that clever. There are linguistic tricks which, unless you're aware of them, are very easy to fall for.
Can we communicate with the dead? Do psychics really have powers? Houdini was able to answer these questions for not only himself, but for many of the curious people of the public. He stood against spiritualism with the House Resolution 8989 and the exposure of Mina Crandon's techniques such as the spell box. Houdini showed the people of America how psychics are nothing but vultures who prey on the bereaved.